It was July 11th, 1804. Dawn settled quietly over the cliffs of Weehawken, New Jersey. The Hudson River shimmered below, but the air was heavy with tension. Two men stood opposite each other, 10 paces apart. Seconds later, 2 shots rang out. When the smoke cleared, Hamilton lay mortally wounded. Burr walked away alive, but politically destroyed. This is the story of how two of America's most brilliant men became bitter enemies, and how their feud ended in the most infamous duel in American history. It was July 11th, 1804. Dawn settled quietly over the cliffs of Weehawken, New Jersey. The Hudson River shimmered below, but the air was heavy with tension. Two men stood opposite each other, 10 paces apart. Seconds later, 2 shots rang out. When the smoke cleared, Hamilton lay mortally wounded. Burr walked away alive, but politically destroyed. This is the story of how two of America's most brilliant men became bitter enemies, and how their feud ended in the most infamous duel in American history. It was July 11th, 1804. Dawn settled quietly over the cliffs of Weehawken, New Jersey. The Hudson River shimmered below, but the air was heavy with tension. Two men stood opposite each other, 10 paces apart. On one side, Alexander Hamilton, founding father, Revolutionary War hero, the architect of America's financial system. On the other, Aaron Burr, Vice President of the United States, cunning, ambitious, and determined to defend his honor. Seconds later, 2 shots rang out. When the smoke cleared, Hamilton lay mortally wounded. Burr walked away alive, but politically destroyed. This is the story of how two of America's most brilliant men became bitter enemies, and how their feud ended in the most infamous duel in American history. It was July 11th, 1804. Dawn settled quietly over the cliffs of Weehawken, New Jersey. The Hudson River shimmered below, but the air was heavy with tension. Two men stood opposite each other, 10 paces apart. One shot missed, or was deliberately wasted. The other struck true. By the next day, Hamilton was dead, and Burr's career lay in ruins. This is not just the story of a duel. It is the story of a rivalry fueled by ambition, honor, and pride. A rivalry that changed the course of American history. Alexander Hamilton's life was the stuff of legend long before Broadway made him famous. Born out of wedlock in the Caribbean, abandoned by his father and orphaned as a child, Hamilton clawed his way to prominence through sheer intelligence and ambition. As a young man, he moved to New York and studied at King's College. But it was the American Revolution that made his name. Serving as George Washington's aide-de-camp, Hamilton demonstrated brilliance both on the battlefield and in strategy. After independence, Hamilton helped draft the U.S. Constitution and co-authored the Federalist Papers. His vision of a strong federal government became the backbone of the young republic. As the first Treasury Secretary, he built America's financial system, the national bank, public credit, and policies that favored commerce and industry. Hamilton was dazzling, sharp, and uncompromising. But he also made enemies at every turn. Aaron Burr's story ran parallel. Born into privilege in 1756, grandson of the famed theologian Jonathan Edwards, Burr excelled from the start. He graduated from Princeton at 16, fought bravely in the Revolution, and became a successful New York lawyer. Where Hamilton was abrasive, Burr was smooth. Where Hamilton was ideological, Burr was pragmatic. Charismatic, witty, and calculating, Burr charmed his way into politics, serving as a senator and eventually as vice president under Thomas Jefferson. Yet Burr's ambition was boundless. He wanted power, not as a servant of principle, but as an end in itself. And Hamilton despised him for it. Narration hook: 2 men. 1. The idealist who believed in institutions and vision. The other, the pragmatist who believed in opportunity and ambition. Their collision was inevitable. The rivalry reached a boiling point in the presidential election of 1800. It was one of the dirtiest elections in American history. Jefferson ran against John Adams, but the real drama came when Jefferson and Burr tied in the Electoral College, each receiving 73 votes. The tie threw the decision to the House of Representatives. The Federalists controlled the chamber. They loathed Jefferson, but they feared Burr. Alexander Hamilton, though a Federalist, lobbied fiercely against Burr. He argued that despite Jefferson's ideology, at least Jefferson had principles. Burr, he said, was untrustworthy, an opportunist who would stop at nothing. In the end, Hamilton's influence broke the tie, handing the presidency to Jefferson. Burr was relegated to vice president. Narration hook. Jefferson won the White House, but Burr's fury burned hot. He believed Hamilton had robbed him of the presidency, and he would never forgive it. The bitterness only grew in New York. Burr and Hamilton clashed repeatedly over state elections, patronage, and political appointments. Hamilton used his vast influence in New York politics to undermine Burr whenever possible. Burr, in turn, maneuvered constantly to outflank Hamilton's Federalist allies. By 1804, Hamilton had blocked Burr's ambitions so many times that the vice president sought revenge in a different way, by running for governor of New York. The governor's race of 1804 was Burr's last chance to salvage his career. If he could win, he might still build a political empire. But Hamilton again opposed him, speaking out in private and public against Burr's character. One newspaper printed Hamilton's alleged words, describing Burr as a dangerous man who ought not to be trusted with the reins of government. For Burr, this was the last straw. Honor demanded satisfaction. He wrote to Hamilton, demanding an apology or retraction. Hamilton refused. He argued that he could not apologize for political opinions, nor could he retract remarks he may or may not have made. With Hamilton defiant, Burr issued a formal challenge. Politics had failed. Letters had failed. There was only one way left to settle the matter, on the field of honor. The morning of July 11th, 1804. The dueling ground at Weehawken, New Jersey. This spot had already seen blood. It was the same place where Hamilton's own son, Philip, had been killed in a duel 3 years earlier. And now, the father would meet his fate there too. Hamilton and Burr met at dawn. Each was accompanied by his second, Nathaniel Pendleton for Hamilton, William Van Ness for Burr. The men carried pistols and prepared according to ritual. The two men stood 10 paces apart. At the signal, they raised their weapons. Hamilton fired first. Some say he aimed high on purpose, throwing away his shot, determined not to kill. Others believe he simply missed. Burr then fired. His shot struck Hamilton in the abdomen, tearing through ribs and lodging near his spine. Hamilton fell instantly, mortally wounded. In a single moment, America's most brilliant mind was silenced, and one of its highest officials became a fugitive. Hamilton was ferried back across the Hudson River to New York. He lingered in agony for more than 30 hours, surrounded by family and friends. On July 12th, he died. He was 47 years old. His death shocked the nation. Federalists lost their guiding light. Hamilton's vision for America, strong, modern, financially stable, was left for others to carry on. Aaron Burr's fate was no better. Though he lived, his career was destroyed. He was indicted for murder in both New York and New Jersey, though never brought to trial. Jefferson, his political rival, froze him out. Burr's reputation was shattered. In later years, he would be implicated in a bizarre conspiracy to carve out his own empire in the West, tried for treason, and though acquitted, forever disgraced. The duel claimed 2 victims. One dead, the other politically finished. Hamilton's ideas outlived him. His financial system endured. His writings in the Federalist Papers continued to shape constitutional law. And his vision of America as a nation of commerce and industry ultimately triumphed. Hamilton was remembered as a martyr of principle, a brilliant but tragic figure whose life was cut short by pride and politics. Burr's story ended very differently. His name became synonymous with treachery and ambition. Though he once held high office, history remembers him chiefly as the man who killed Alexander Hamilton. The duel of Hamilton and Burr stands as a cautionary tale. It revealed how fragile America's early politics were, when disputes of honor could still end in gunfire. It shows us the dangers of unchecked ambition, wounded pride, and personal hatred in public life.